My name is Randy Newcomb. I'm the CEO of Humanity United. We have a really terrific session this afternoon as our final session, and I've been looking forward to this all week, and I hope and I'm sure you'll enjoy it as well. It's really a very exciting session because we're looking at this next 30 minutes around this topic of when states fail to protect, and what is the role for private philanthropy, which is a very, very interesting subject for us today. And it's really my great pleasure to welcome to the stage today Cindy McCain. She's one of our final speakers today on this new contract that we've been talking about all week in the emerging field of global philanthropy. Cindy's a businesswoman. She's a very ambitious philanthropist, as you'll find out. And she's the spouse, as we all know, of U.S. Senator and 2008 presidential nominee John McCain of Arizona. Cindy also sits on several boards, including CARE, Halo Trust, which is a very interesting demining effort, as well as Operation Smile. And as I was doing the research, I discovered that Operation Smile was actually the first Conrad Hilton Humanitarian Prize winner in 1996. So there's a nice synergy here between Cindy's role with Operation Smile and the Hilton Humanitarian Award. So would you please welcome Cindy as she comes to the stage right now, and we'll begin our conversation. Now, I think we probably all believe that we know Cindy McCain from her terrific role in public service over the years. But I have to say I discovered two things about Cindy that I have to say I was not aware of, and that I think is very interesting. The first is that I understand you're a race car driver.
Yeah.
And you are also an amateur pilot.
I am.
Is that right?
I am, yeah.
Is that right?
I am. I started pilot training years and years ago when my husband first decided to run for the Senate because I was scared to fly. And I thought, well, I'll just go to ground school and kind of figure this out, and then I won't be screaming in the back of the airplane. And it turned out not only liking it, but getting my license, buying an airplane, and going from there, and then flying him during his first Senate race. So it turned out to be a good thing for me.
That's outstanding. Perhaps if you're not available and I'm back to San Francisco, we can... But listen, let's jump right into some of the subject here. As I've had a chance to really look at your philanthropy and the work that you've been doing for many, many years, there's a theme that draws out from your work, and it seems that you personally are pulled to some really tough, difficult neighborhoods around the world. In fact, we were just talking over lunch, and Cindy is leaving the week after next for northern Uganda, I believe, to do some work there. You've also done quite a bit of work in Vietnam, Cambodia. You were in DRC in 1994 during the genocide in Rwanda, and more recently, we're working on refugee issues in Somalia. And I'm just curious, what draws you to, what are some pretty tough neighborhoods around the world?
Well, like all of you in here, it started with me having an experience years ago, and it was a personal experience with a friend, and it kind of grew from there. But what I found that at least drives me, and what brought me into this and into the tough, like you said, the tough zones. I was in the first Gulf War. Right as it ended, we dropped into Kuwait when everything was still on fire. And to me, the importance of doing that and the importance of being there to see what's going on was what was driving me. I needed to be boots on the ground. And I still do. I still find that the most important thing that I do in learning not only about the issue, but learning what really counts, not only with philanthropy, but the future of philanthropy. And so for me, the ongoing drive that I have and that I encourage people around me to do, and people that work for me say, can't we go to Paris or something? Can't we go someplace fun? And instead we head off to Goma, which is much more exciting in my idea. So. Well,
obviously you could easily contract this out, so it seems important that you're there on the first-hand basis.
Well, I have always encouraged anybody that begins in philanthropy or is in philanthropy now. Now I realize not everybody can hop on an airplane and fly to Africa or Asia or South America at the drop of a hat, but I do think it's important as a philanthropist to be on the ground at some point and to be extraordinarily involved, because not always what you are told by those telling you what they may need is right. It's, you know, you see more, you hear more, you feel more if you can taste it, feel it, touch it yourself. And so I'm a big proponent of you know, really being an active, integral part of what you're doing and being a boot on the ground, at least for a short period.
Now, I thought it was interesting that actually in 1994, it was April 1994, I don't know if you were in Goma.
I was.
And at that very time, the genocide was taking place in Rwanda. And you were on the front lines of supporting and providing medical care for refugees that were coming across the border. And I don't think we could find a more germane example of when states fail to protect.
Exactly.
And this was an example where you were providing and supporting medical care.
We were asked to go in. I had a medical team at that time, and we were asked to go in and participate in helping the refugees that were coming across. And of course, what we found is, like all of you have seen, is something not only far worse, but unfathomable. I mean, it was literally, and because the ground, not to be too graphic, but because the ground is very volcanic in the area that we were in Goma, the refugees were coming directly over the border, and so many of them had cholera that they were literally dying on the roads. But the problem was, and the part that was so astounding for those of us working there was no place to put them. And so it was a cycle of illness and a cycle of life that ended in just an incredible scene, and which is the reason that I do what I do now, because that memory will be forever in my head, and the vision and the smell and the feeling that I had at that moment, and the feeling of helplessness. Even though I was there with a great deal of ability to be a part of the solution, I still couldn't do enough, and none of us could. And so it is the reason I do what I do. It really is.
Well, it raises this question, as if you travel in these zones, you really discover that there's a lot of. It's not as if there isn't resources that are sloshing around. So you see multilateral, bilateral development bank resources that are coming in. That sort of just, I sense it as sort of a sloshing of resources that aren't used too terribly effective at times. And you know, I think to dig inside this even more. What do you think is unique about the private philanthropist in this setting? Because obviously our resources are diluted by these huge dollar amounts that are coming from the multilaterals. But what's unique on the philanthropic side?
Well, you may not want to hear this, but I think that the private philanthropic dollar is much more effective than the state financing and the government financing. I'm not saying that we don't need it, because we do. We absolutely need state and governments to be involved, but private philanthropies generally wind up funding community-based organizations and organizations that really know what they need from a community level and from a very local level. And so private funding is extraordinarily important when you're talking about women and children's issues, particularly democracy projects, whatever you as a philanthropist are involved in. The private philanthropy efforts on behalf of countries around the world to me, there's no replacement for it, and there's no duplication for it, and it's not only necessary, but it's something that we need to continue to thrive and grow with as much as we can.
There's one interesting project, as we were preparing for today's talk, discovered that we co-fund some similar projects, and we knew that we co-fund the Eastern Congo Initiative, which is a very, very ambitious, just terrific initiative. And Cindy, I know you've been here this week sort of advocating on a white paper that ECI just recently released.
We did. Eastern Congo Initiative, which is the organization that was founded by Ben Affleck, just released a white paper on the security sector reforms / progress / lack of progress in Congo. And at the Woodrow Wilson Center on Monday, and an event that we thought was just going to be pro forma and kind of press release kind of deal turned into almost a fist fight in the room.
Well, that would be fun to see at the Wilson
It was really fun, but it was. But to just describe to you that tensions are very deep, not only in, I mean, this is an understatement, but tensions in any of the countries that have been conflict-ridden for so many years are extraordinarily deep. And there's really no set solution. But the one solution, and the one that I keep telling people that come to me that say, what can I do in Africa? Nobody can help in Africa. It's just too big, it's too overwhelming, I don't want to go there. And I tell them, you know, bottom line, it's all about women and children, in my opinion. And so I always guide them to more of the human level than the government level in this respect, because I think that unless we can protect those who are most vulnerable, we're not going to be able to make any successes anywhere in that region. And it's bad. Well, you know, you all know, you're in the business, so.
You know, another thing within your even beyond your philanthropic support is just your support personally around election monitoring.
Yeah. That
I found so interesting. I often say that we're never going to be able to buy our way out of these problems, and we shouldn't think that the philanthropic capital that we have is the only solution. Mm-hmm. And there's other ways that perhaps can be even more impactful. And I can see as a part of the theme of your work for many, many years, you've been engaged in election monitoring mm-hmm. activities. Mm-hmm. In fact, you were in the Democratic Republic of Congo prior to the elections in 2011. Mm-hmm. And I believe you were there with BIM at the same mm-hmm. time, which that's not too bad of an assignment.
But, no heavy lifting.
Yeah. But tell us about what's going on in post-elections.
First of all, I believe in democracy projects. This is not about party building, as you know. It's about freedom and democracy and the right for self-determination. And so any of these organizations that do this, I laud what you do, because I think it's a phenomenal way to really have an impact in a region, and particularly a region like Congo. Now, Congo, there was no existence of free and fair elections. There was no existence of anything, and I will also say I'm disappointed in how the United States kind of smoothed Kabila's election over after it was done, because it was truly a corrupt election, and there was nothing free and fair about it. And so I was a little disappointed in that, but that's for another discussion. But the philanthropic efforts on the part of the Carter Center, NDI, IRI, and some of the others that were in there made at least an impact on women candidates, which is something that we're a big proponent of. But the women candidates and women participants in the process were extraordinarily important this time.
You know, in a moment, I'd like to talk more about your work in Burma, and you have a very long history in Burma, and so I want to dive into that in a moment. But we've talked before about what you do when these emerging democracies don't take the shape of democracy that we're accustomed to mm-hmm. within our own states, mm-hmm. and how you reflect upon that in terms of advancing this sort of free and fair approach.
Well, I know for all of you that do this, free and fair are the key words here. It's not about, you know, a democracy in another part of the world does not resemble a democracy here, but that's not what this is about. It's about the self-determination. And so if we can monitor, inform, train, you know, in whatever fashion you belong in this, people, to give them guidance in how to self-determine and how to take control of their own future. That's what this is all about, because it not only affects the governance, but it affects, as you know, the youngest and most vulnerable of all of that, and that's the children. Burma, gosh, aren't things exciting in Burma right now? I mean, this is wonderful. And we were talking with regards to human trafficking, which is, as you know, Burma is a source country. And so I think now with what's going on, philanthropists particularly are going to be able to have an extraordinary impact in that country on many issues. But on human trafficking, this will be a remarkable opportunity for people.
No, I think you're right. It's very interesting to see what's taking place there. And I just read yesterday that the Treasury Department is beginning to relax mm-hmm. some sanctions, mm-hmm. which is sort of opening a door for private engagement in a much more ambitious and aggressive way than we've been able to in the past. I understand that you met Aung San Suu Kyi when she was in
she was still
house
under house arrest, yeah.
And you were right, I think, rightfully critical of the military rulers during the 2008 campaign, and you've been, if I can say it this way, very progressive on these human rights violations that took place there. And can you unpack that a little bit more?
Well, I get very frustrated. To me, I don't like to beat around the bush when it comes to human rights violations, and I'm in fact offended by organizations that soft pedal, something that is a clear violation and soft pedal it by saying, well, yes, there could be a future, we could, or change the language in some way. I think if philanthropies as a whole don't take a strong stand on what we believe is right, human rights violations, human trafficking, whatever it may be, whatever, landmines, whatever your interest is in, I mean, for the obvious, it's not going to help, but the overall impact is the bad guys see we're not firm on it. And I look at it from a ground perspective, if that makes sense. When you see a soft, what I call a soft talk about an issue or a human rights violation, governments that are letting this happen see that, they hear that, and it's the light that says, okay, it's okay to keep doing this. Congo's a perfect example of that with the rape and child soldiering and all those kinds of things going on right now, because there's very few, I should say, people standing up and saying, and I'll pose that to women's organizations, saying enough, we're not going to stand for this anymore. We're not going to do this as a world philanthropy organization. And I'm not criticizing anybody, but you understand what I'm trying to say? It's extraordinarily important that if we don't take a strong stand as philanthropists in general, that I just don't know where we go. We can't rely on governments to do this.
No, that's right. When you look at the demographics out of this eastern Congo region, which is along the Kivus, and the demographics among women and girls who've been raped as high as 70%, among those communities. I had
a talk one day with a group of women, and we were just sitting around the table, Congolese women, and we were talking, we were talking about the rape issue, which is openly discussed there as a way of life, almost. And this woman looked at her watch, and she looked up, and she kind of rolled her eyes, and she said, I was raped about a month ago. I'm due again. And I mean, like you, the blood just drained out of me. I mean, as a world community, we can't let this happen anymore. I mean, we have to stand up and vocalize that this is wrong, and I don't see enough of that. And I get in trouble. I get in trouble on Twitter. I get in trouble on Facebook. I get in trouble all the time for going too far, but I don't care. I really think this is an important issue.
Let me say for all of us that we support you continuing to get in trouble. We want
Tell
you to
my
get
husband
in trouble.
that.
Well, we can have that conversation later.
I know. I'm teasing.
But clearly we need those kinds of voices.
Yeah.
And
and you as individual philanthropies, as group philanthropies, you are important players in this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And so I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I encourage anybody who wants to stand up and just say it, because no one else is. No one else is.
So we were just chatting here over lunch, and you indicated that you had just decided the week after next you're going to Uganda, and I get the feel that you're going to look at these refugee flows that are coming out of the Congo, that you indicated to me from your research that this doesn't look to be just a small flow of refugees coming across.
Well, it was 15,000 over a weekend, and whenever there's, I mean, in my experience, which is not that extraordinary, but I mean, that's a large group in a short amount of time, and so I can guess what's going on. I can pretty much figure it out, but I want to see it. I need to see what's going on and hear what's happening. because these are Congolese refugees that are coming across the border now. So maybe they've honed in on Coney. Who knows? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know. Speaking of the Coney video.
Good. Let's go there.
Let's go to the Coney video. I was one of the 2,000 that got the first zap of that. And mind you, I know it's controversial. It's controversial in how he portrayed it. It was controversial in what the message was. But the bottom line was, who in here doesn't know who Coney is now? And that's remarkable. We've got a guy that's wanted by everybody in the world, and they're going to get him. They're going to get this guy, and he's bad. So I mean, I'm just, for whatever reason, agree or disagree with the video. Name idea is what it's all about, and this guy's on the radar scale now, and I think that's wonderful. No,
I think you're right, and I mean, in disclosure, Humanity United was an early donor to the Coney 2012 project in Invisible Children, and prior to this video, I don't think you would have ever found the story about Joseph Coney on the front page of the Washington Post as it was yesterday.
No, he's in the conversation now.
He's in the conversation.
Which is what this is all about. Yeah,
that's right.
It's wonderful.
Right. So go with me here. So you're flying around your airplane, and your mind starts to wander, if you can do that in a plane. I'm assuming you can put it on autopilot. and you think about your philanthropy. What are you the most proud of?
Oh, I was working years ago in Bangladesh and working with children, you know, again, a medical team kinds of things. I'd been asked to go down with our team to visit a certain orphanage that was run by Mother Teresa. And I didn't go there to adopt. That was the furthest thing from my mind. I had 3 little babies at home. And I wound up being adopted by 2 little Bangladeshi girls, and I brought them back. But I hadn't told my husband. And I really hadn't intended, adoption, like I said, was never in the scope. These kids needed medical care. It was serious. I knew I could get them out. And even at the point where the Minister of Health, who was a kind of rough-looking guy and a tough talk, and he was speaking Hindi only, even though he was fluent in English, brought me in front of the entire board, health board there in Dhaka, and said, you know, they're chattering around, and then said to me, well, we can fix these children. My daughter has a very severe cleft palate, and the other one had a heart condition. And they looked at me, so we can fix these babies here. We can do this. And for the love of God, I do not know where this came from. I slammed my fist on the table and I said, then by God, do it. And this guy did not know what to do with me. He signed the paperwork and said, please take them, go, please. And I stepped off an airplane in Phoenix, Arizona, never having told my husband that I was coming home with babies, number one. And when he asked me, the one in my arms was the one with the cleft palate, our daughter, where she was going, I said, I thought you'd go to our house. And he said, fine. He's a great guy. He's a really great guy. The other one is with another family, and they're both 20 years old now. And they both go to ASU, Arizona State University. So my proudest achievement would be my daughter. Yeah.
And as it should be.
Yes.
And as it should be. So you're with a very friendly family here. The GPF community really is a family in many respects. And we feel blessed in many ways to have you come and join us and spend a few minutes with us today. And so we have an opportunity with dear friends, as well as people who are really interested in not sort of sitting on the sidelines, or if we can draw from Jed Emerson's metaphor yesterday of sitting in the pond and just waiting to strike. This is a group that really wants to make change happen. Mm-hmm. And nor they wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. I know. And so, you know, with this community, what would you say to a group of philanthropists that are really looking to make an impact from your experience that we should be paying attention to?
The obvious answer is follow your heart. I mean, I tell anybody who asks me that. But I also say stay firm, stay determined, because there's a lot of, I think, misinformation out there towards philanthropy. There's a lot of people will discourage you, or maybe perhaps push you in another direction that maybe you didn't want to focus on. but stay focused and stay determined, and most importantly, stay talking to each other. Your intercommunication and your ability to network in this arena is most important. We have a group of people from around the world here, and what you can do together coming out of this room and coming forward can top any government, any place. I mean, and any group of people, and the impact that you will have will be lifelong. So I wish I could tell you from a business standpoint what to do, or from a just a global perspective, because I work all over the world. Each of you have your own areas, and just never, never, never give up, ever, 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 because what you do is the most important thing you will ever do, in my opinion.
Well, that's outstanding. This is a very determined philanthropist, folks. Please join me in welcoming her and thanking her for her comments today.
Thank you.